Zeitgeist number 6 Qualas Conquest of America by Amitakh Stanford 11th March 2011.
Last century, the Qualas started World War I and World War II. The instigators were the Northern European Qualas and the Southern European Qualas. All the world paid the price as these two postured for world dominance.
These two are still vying for dominance. Today's target is Libya, and the stated reasoning behind it is that the Libyan military is killing its own people. Therefore, the Qualas argue the nation of Libya should be helped with Western missiles and bombs to oust Muammar Gaddafi, the head of state. If this be the sincere case, then there are many other heads of state needing to be ousted under such righteous reasoning. If there be any country in the world that has not killed its own people, let that nation cast the first stone.
If the Qualas and their supporters are truly concerned about governments killing their own citizens, then why have they not gone after Israel to stop the bloodshed? One reason is that the Qualas already control Israel. They are looking to install another puppet regime in Libya. It is not about oil or human rights. It is about grabbing territory. If the Qualas succeed in conquering Libya, their plan for control of North Africa and the whole of the Middle East will be a step closer to fruition. Once the Qualas have consolidated the region, they will set their sights on America, China and Russia.
Britain has been calling for a no-fly zone over Libya for weeks now. They have not been able to draw the USA in yet. So Britain has called on another to be its lackey. France has responded to the call. This is how Britain often gets things done. It decides what it wants, and effectively makes it look as though some other party commenced the action. The Prime Minister of Britain, David Cameron, has been the moving and vocal party from the onset. There is no hiding this fact now. It has unfolded before the world's eyes.
Remember that Cameron said that the killing of British citizens by the British military on Bloody Sunday was unjustified and unjustifiable. It sounded good, but later, the world learned the apology was made to try to silence Irish Republican protests against the English monarchy. Thus, the long overdue apology had an ulterior motive. The Irish were killed on Bloody Sunday by the British military. The homicides, according to the British PM, were unjustified and unjustifiable.
Hopefully, the apology to the Aborigines by the former Australian Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, was sincere and not like the Bloody Sunday apology by the UK Prime Minister.
In reality, Britain is not its own master. It is directed by the Northern European Qualas, whose main quarrel is with the Southern European Qualas, regardless of how it plays out on the surface. The USA has an opportunity to distance itself from both groups of Qualas in this conflict, but there are so many agents of both Qualas groups in the USA that it no longer has its own interests on call. It has become a puppet of the Qualas, and it is up to the American people to stop the Qualas agenda.
Some Christian denominations are finally voicing that a loving God would not allow Israel to abuse its Palestinian citizens. Sadly, those who could stop the abuse have continued to just watch passively. Both Jews and Palestinians who truly want peace are suffering because of the warmongering Qualas and their agents.
The Qualas do not care whether people worship in synagogues, temples, mosques or churches. They do not care whether they are Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, Jews or atheists. It is all the same to the Qualas. Their plan is to control the world. Religions and philosophies are just their tools, as are commerce, finance, science, politics and other systems. The Qualas have many ways of enslaving the people.
The Green movement has been thoroughly adulterated by the Qualas. Green politicians do the Qualas bidding. The Greens proudly declare themselves to be growing in power and influence. They now care less about the planet and more about political power. So many nations now have hung parliaments that the few green seats get a voice. Have these happened by coincidence or by Qualas' design?
The Greens used to abhor nuclear power. The Qualas agents have spread the propaganda that nuclear energy is carbon-friendly. Since the Qualas have thoroughly infiltrated all the Green parties and organizations, the Greens cannot have enough nuclear reactors, unless those reactors are in nations that are not totally controlled by the Qualas. The Australian Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, promised that if elected, there will be no carbon tax under a government I lead. Now, she says there will be a carbon tax.
This is not surprising, because Australia's head of state executive is Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen has been urging the UN, and the entire world for that matter, to put a tax on carbon and participate in an emissions trading scheme. Of course, the Australian Prime Minister must follow the Queen's lead, unless Australia becomes a republic and can nominate its own executive and make its own decisions.
Australians have been devastated by floods, cyclones, fires and storms. They can barely rebuild their own country, let alone pay the Queen's carbon tax. Only the Australian people can fight the carbon tax. Their government will not fight it because the government's executive insists on it.
The world will continue to go through many changes. Natural and artificially induced natural disasters will continue to spatter the globe. More are coming if the Qualas continue on their path to world conquest. Imagine the chaos the Qualas will cause when famous bridges begin collapsing.
As for the USA, the Qualas have already seriously weakened it. America is stretched too thin financially, militarily, politically and otherwise. The weakening has been on the Qualas agenda for centuries. It is now nearing the point of no return for America. There is only a small window of opportunity for Americans to break away from the Qualas. Liberty is not about fighting Qualas wars and forcing democracy around the world. Liberty is about freedom, peace of mind, and clear conscience. It is not about material gains, political victories, or military conquests. The antithesis of liberty is to force one's will on another.
The Qualas have tricked America into fighting wars for them. Ironically, most of the world believes that the wars were American wars. America resisted World War I and World War II, but the Qualas eventually dragged America into both wars on the premise that it would be fighting for freedom. Adolf Hitler was sponsored by the Southern European Qualas, and Winston Churchill was led by the Northern European Qualas. Freedom could not have won World War II, it was wholly a Qualas war and it became a Qualas victory. In truth, the Qualas were using both world wars to trick America into becoming the world's police force.
After World War II, there has been one war after another. Most people now think of Korea, Vietnam, Yugoslavia, Iraq, and Afghanistan as American wars. They are not. All were started by the Qualas. The UN and NATO are both Qualas creations, as is the nation of Israel. The people involved in these schemes get caught up in the Qualas plans and eventually believe them to be their own aspirations and responsibilities, and unwittingly take on the battles for the Qualas. In other words, they are all made pawns by the Qualas.
It remains to be seen whether the Qualas will again trick America into fighting another war in the Mediterranean. This time the stage is Libya. Both Qualas groups seek control of northern Africa. They have succeeded in building up the American ego until it now does the Qualas bidding without thinking for itself. It has become the bully for the Qualas.
Ironically, the Qualas bulldog is nearing the end of its usefulness and is now in grave danger of being conquered by the Qualas. The weakening of the USA is so far advanced that the previously unthinkable is now becoming a possibility. The Qualas could muster a military invasion of the USA. However, it is not too late for America to thwart the Qualas' plans.
Indeed, the world is in a difficult time, which the Qualas hope to make much worse as they pursue world conquest.
Copyright 2011 Amitakh, Stanford.